All right. So, where does a conservative millennial white man get his water from?
Where?
Oh, well, actually.
Hey, I found his dad!
I think Dad has made some excellent progress today.
Your dad, he's a fun guy, right?
And I love him so much, and I think he's the greatest dad in the world.
Welcome back to the Working on the Dad Pod. I'm Alex. With me, as always, is Ethan. And today we are talking about dating your co-parent, right? And so this really refers to keeping things fresh in the relationship, right? How you can get stuck in a rut sometimes. People call it the roommate phase. That's been something that has been a common term I've seen used a lot on social media these days, but the roommate phase, where it feels like you're more roommates than romantic partners, and you're kind of just getting all the chores done, all the tasks. You're taking on your roles, and we'll dive into that a little bit more in our main topic. Before that, we'll have story time. After that, we'll work on the dad bod. But first, let's remind you to like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. YouTube is where we post our videos first. That's the best place. Like, subscribe, get notifications so you know when we post a new video. We're actually recording this one a little early, so might be an extra special treat for people. I don't know. I think Ethan's on editing duty tonight, so it depends on when he gets around to it. But how you doing, Ethan?
I'm I'm okay. It was kind of a weird end to my day today. I told you and some other people offline, but a meeting has been added to my calendar on Friday afternoon, and it's a meeting I, for the last few months, have not wanted to go to. I guess I'm getting my shot, so I'm not going to get too much into it, but it's definitely a bummer because it's from 1:30 to 4:30, which means I will not make it back in time for either of my daughter's end of near the end of school year parent teacher conferences. So, my wife's gonna have to do those solo, which a lot of couples do, but usually one of us takes on the role of I'm gonna ask all the questions, and the other person is the one who reminds the other person these are the questions you forgot to ask. So, just kind of tag teaming 2-on-1 against the teacher. So, yeah, no, it's definitely a bummer. I actually enjoy those and like seeing a little bit more of just how was her day today when I pick her up, getting a little bit more in depth. I do enjoy that part of the school year and the midpoint. So I am bummed to miss it, but sounds like I could have a real opportunity is the word on my hands for this meeting Friday. So, yeah. How are you?
I'm doing all right. I am solo parenting for most of this week. My wife left early on Tuesday morning before any of the rest of the house got up to fly on a business trip, and she will be getting back. Today's Wednesday. And she'll be getting back Friday morning, but we're literally going to be two ships, not ships, but we're going to be like two ships passing in the night. And we're actually going to be meeting up halfway between our house and the airport to switch cars because we have one Toyota RAV4 and we have one old Honda Fit. And my Honda Fit, it's basically at the end of his life. We're shopping for new cars casually, but I think that's going to ramp up here in the coming months because the air conditioner doesn't really work on the Honda, and living in Florida, that's not ideal. It can be tolerable and manageable with the windows down, but short of that, it's good from getting to point A to point B in short bursts, but ideally not a car I want to leave my wife with for extended period with the kids, if at all possible, as it continues to, be in the 80s around here pretty much every day and only going up. But that leads me into story time. So yesterday evening, one of the things that changes when my wife or I are out of town is school drop off. We don't bike with my daughter because we have my son. And while he can ride his training wheel bike fairly well, it's not perfect. He gets tired fairly easily. He's slow. It's just not something that you want to manage. I can't walk fast enough to keep up with my daughter on the bike, and I can't bike slow enough to keep up with my son. So it's just not a
Right.
tenable solution. So we just do car line for drop off. And that's fine. But yesterday my daughter asked if we could walk to school, right? The three of us this morning. And I said, okay, here are the parameters. You've got to be ready extra early. If we can't get out the door by this time, then it's a no. Like, we're just going to get in the car and go to car line, because we need all the time to accommodate your brother walking slower, to accommodate that we'll need to walk back. We need you right at school on time, right? And for those that are like, well, of course the kid needs to be at school on time. She gets breakfast at school every day. So it's sort of like if we're there a few minutes late, she's cutting into her breakfast time. She's not actually like tardy for school. So that's where the math comes in. Anyway, they got up, they got ready, and we did it. And so it was a fun little, just nice family walk. And it was a great opportunity. The kids would do races from like one mailbox to the next or something. And I definitely encouraged that a little bit, because it kept us moving, right? It kept us moving in the right direction. And so it was a lot of fun to have a nice little morning together that wasn't all like, do what you're supposed to do, go where you're supposed to go, get ready, get ready, get ready, kind of commands, and have a nice little time. I will say I'm probably not going to do it again. And I told my daughter as much, that we're not doing it tomorrow, because predictably my son ran out of steam. Like, he wasn't difficult. He wasn't, anything, but it's a little over half a mile each way. It's not crazy for a grown up, but the 3-year-old did not want to race me on the way back. He was like, I'm tired. He started complaining, wanting his water bottle. And I'm like, bro, we're not even we haven't even made the first turn. So it was a little, and he's getting big enough and heavy enough where I don't really want to carry him a whole half a mile. So
do you, will he still sit?
Like,
okay. That was going to be my question. Like, will he still sit in the stroller?
He would. I don't think I planned that far ahead, and I was just kind of like, I'm going to enjoy the walk. And today was going to be a recovery day at the gym, where I was going to do a little cardio and some mobility. And so honestly, I skipped the gym this morning. I was like, let's just take our sweet time. Let's not be in a hurry, because the only thing we have to be in a hurry for is to get to the gym. And I've been doing sprints, right? Like, sometimes some of the races I was trying my hardest, and some I wasn't. And some I was giving a big head start so that I could run, and like, I was getting my activity minutes in, right? And so I was moving, and I basically gave him an episode of TV instead, and like did some mobility in my living room floor, and just said, okay, we're not going to be in a hurry. And then I drove him to school. But yeah, I think it's one of those where I don't have to have some big takeaway or like life lesson from it. I'm just like, yeah, walking to school. I'm glad I did it, and I don't want to do it again.
Yeah. So, walking to school is my, normal go-to with the girls. My older one will either bike, scooter, ride on the, like, she calls it the hoverboard, but just like the standing board on the back of the stroller. Or today, because we thought it would rain, and I didn't want to deal with all that, because anytime she is on the back and trying to hold the umbrella for the both of us, it hits me in the face. So she was just walking and holding the umbrella. So that's why I asked about the stroller, because sometimes the 2.5-year-old wants to do the walk too, but it's always nice to have the stroller as like the backup plan for when they run out of gas.
I think if I wanted to, like, if I wanted to do it, I would do the stroller next time, but I'm not like, it just, I didn't really think of it. Probably should have, but I just didn't want to, he was going to want to walk, and we have a really on purpose, like, lightweight stroller that is actually kind of a pain to stroll without a human being in it.
Sure.
So yeah.
I feel that. Yeah. So my story time actually happened tonight. It is actually my wife's story, and I thought that that would be a good transition into tonight's topic since it's about, talking about our partners. So my wife had happy hour with a friend who recently moved out of town, who was back in town. So I was just solo dad in the night for dinner. Normally not a bad thing. Picked the girls up from school, brought them home, you know, heated up some leftovers because today is normally Pancake Wednesday, and I don't do pancakes. Can't, the Alpern curse. So since my wife wasn't here, we did leftovers. And at some point toward the end of the meal, not my older daughter, but the younger one decided that she wanted to be the pain in the caboose tonight. And, the shizit hit the fan. So my wife texts me and is just, hey, heading home. I'm like, great. And then, waited a couple minutes because I knew it would take her about 10 minutes to get home. And I was like, just so you know, it's terrible here. But I didn't want her to know that until she was, had enough time to cool down from her high. So she gets home. Girls are doing their thing. I do the chores I need to do. And I just said to her, hey, can I have free time until, I do shower with the girls? She said, yeah. So went upstairs, laid down, listened to my audiobook. And I guess the girls wanted to play this normal game that they play called, Family Trip. And I guess tonight's imaginary mode of transportation was train. And my wife was telling them it was time to go upstairs, get ready for bed. And my 5-year-old goes, it's not, we haven't gotten on the train yet. We still have to go. And so my wife takes a pretend phone call, talks to customer service at Amtrak, and informs my daughter that all trains today have been canceled and that they've been rescheduled for tomorrow's train. And my daughter goes, oh, okay, put her stuff down and ran upstairs. And she told me about that. And I was like, that is today's story time. So well done, honey.
That's a coin flip move.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
She's either gonna go along with that, or she's gonna absolutely lose her mind that you're trying to gaslight her like that. I mean, at least that's how my daughter would be.
Oh yeah, no, I'm surprised. I'm surprised it worked. So I just want to give her credit where credit was due.
I would have just made the train go upstairs.
Another option too. Changing route.
Yeah, like you need them to be there. Yeah. They want to be a train. You tell them that you're the first car, and they have to I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah, I don't know, but it worked. It worked. So
it worked.
So
it's not it's not the journey; it's the destination on that one.
Right. Exactly. So. I'm excited about this topic because my wife and I actually did have a semi-impromptu date night this last weekend. We have had a gift card to this restaurant in DC that does a fun little tasting menu, and I got it for my birthday. That was obviously 7 months ago, and we just hadn't used it. And I just took a look at the reservations when I was at work one day, and they had something available for Saturday night. And I said, hey, let's do this. We just got to figure out who can babysit. So I made the reservation, and, we were cutting it kind of close until my sister-in-law said that she actually was in fact able to babysit for us on Saturday night. But it was spontaneous. It was, semi-spontaneous. It was a Thursday morning decision for a Saturday night date, which but what's nice to know is that we now have a roster of possible babysitters that at least the 2.5-year-old will listen to and be comfortable with, where right. My older daughter, she likes to play hostess. She enjoys any and everyone who's coming to babysit. It really always comes down to the 2.5-year-old. And, if she has a bad night, she has a bad night. Whatever. The truth is, it's also for the sake of the babysitter. We want somebody to enjoy being here with the kids. And if my younger
Sure.
one's a complete terror, they might not come back. So, for us, and I know it's a little bit, you have a better roster of babysitters than we do, but it really comes
Sure.
down to, we really haven't had many opportunities to just impromptu go out on dates. And so it was really nice that we actually pulled one off. Yeah.
Good. Yeah. So I think, if we back up a little bit and sort of reintroduce the topic, I know I talked about it a little bit, but I think what sparked this is something that I put on our like very initial brainstorm before we started this show. And just
Mhm.
something that I think we've never gotten into talking about, but like I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, it's something that I see more on social media, this idea of the roommate stage. And so
Yeah.
really what the roommate stage is right, like signs you might be in it are like if you have minimal communication with your partner beyond like logistics, where you guys just aren't having those kind of heartfelt talks that, not to get too mushy here, but like made you fall in love in the first place, right?
Mhm.
That you're just, okay, where do I need to be? What do I need to be doing? Who do I need to be doing it with? That kind of stuff. That you really feel like you're just sort of managing each other. That
Yeah.
there's maybe a lack of intimacy physically and emotionally. And that maybe you sort of have just separate interests or lives. Like you're each just sort of like doing your own thing all the time, and just crossing paths when you cross paths. And there's probably a lot of reasons for this. I know that I wouldn't say it's a phase that my wife and I like are in, but there are definitely weeks or moments in time where I do feel like we go through this because of life stress, because of work stress, right? Um, because everything just kind of becomes routine, that it's just tough to make time when you are trying to, in both of our cases, like raise two other humans and keep up with their growing needs as they want to do more things after school. They want to, you know when your first kid stops napping and your second kid stops napping, like there's just not a lot of time built into the day, especially if you're trying to go to bed early or wake up early or anything like that. Just the time gets away from you. But there are some things that my wife and I have done, and you mentioned it, like we've got a great support system between our two moms. And so like on Friday nights, my mom keeps the kids until 6:30, right? She picks them both up from school and she has them and she delivers them home at 6:30. Now, quite often she doesn't actually bring them home at 6:30. She brings them somewhere else, because what my wife and I try to do is we like to go somewhere that has a happy hour that's kid friendly. But we try to clock off pretty close to 5 and get there and have a drink and just connect and talk, and build those times in. But not always. There have definitely been some Fridays where it's like we've got things we need to do, like when we're doing a house project. And it's like, okay, we're taking this opportunity to retile the shower because the kids aren't here. Taking this opportunity to chisel away the old concrete because it's abutting the kids' room, right? And we don't want to do that while they're here in the house, or whatever those kinds of to-dos might be. It's also a great opportunity for that. So one of the things that we, are not great about, but do from time to time, is just sort of take a few moments after the kids have gone to bed to just talk and reconnect, and talk about our priorities. I mentioned when we were working on finances, one thing is like finance date night. And I know that doesn't sound like super intimate, but it's not so much like, it's not just like going over bills and like checking out a spreadsheet. It's sort of like, once we break down all the things that have to be paid for, we have money left over. We're fortunate enough to, have a little bit of money left over. And then we get to talk about how we want to prioritize that in our life, like whether we want to put that towards a new car fund, or whether there's a trip that we want to go on, or we want to do these kinds of things. And we take some joy in that, because that gives us the opportunity to vocalize our interests, what's been going through our mind, our wants, our desires, like on that kind of front. And I think that, that's a great way sometimes to do the thing you have to do, but build in some intimacy to it, that it doesn't become this transactional thing, but it does become a little bit of an emotional thing, and having deeper conversations again, that can be tough. But I'll kick it back to you, because I don't want to just like dominate all the ways we do or don't, create that intimacy.
No.
But what do you guys do to sort of have not just, well, here's what tomorrow looks like kind of conversations?
Yeah, it's gotten a lot tougher now that I'm back at work, because we now have even less time together. She sometimes I wake up to say goodbye to her when she leaves in the morning, and then I'm usually not home till closer to 6 now, just with my commute. So we don't have as much time that we even did to just like sneak a few minutes one-on-one to talk about something not kid or logistics related. So one thing that has been really good for us is my wife's a very avid reader. I know your wife is too. So I have been trying to I go the audiobook route and listen to the books that she really, really likes. Just so that I can sporadically throw in a detail about the book, or something that happened, or she'll be telling me something serious, and I will drop a line that really stuck with me. And what it does is it does show her that I am at least trying to not spice up isn't the right word, but sprinkle in, little bits of her personality, her interests into, the what's the word I'm looking for? The rhythm of the day, if that makes sense. And so that's something that has actually then we get to talking about this, and then it turns into something else. And, it really does kind of just bring us back to how we were before we had all this responsibility, where we could just talk about stuff that wasn't, trying to figure out the logistics of, well, now I can't go to parent teacher conference, so let me be there for you in spirit and tell you, luckily she told me like 3 weeks ago, don't let me forget to ask this question. Instead of writing it down, it became my responsibility, right? So today, when I was picking up the girls, because she was at happy hour, the teacher that I was supposed to ask the question to, I was like, hey, just learn I'm not going to be there Friday. I was told, I know she really wants to ask this question, so I'm going to ask you now so that you can have it baked in to the presentation for her. So that, so that is like just kind of, that's got nothing to do with what we asked for, but it's simply just kind of like, how can I still be there without being there? And that became a whole conversation. So, it's really hard to get out of, the roommate phase, or, if it's not a phase, like the roommate moments, because it's really kind of just like, sometimes, like, I feel very roommatey when it comes to the marriage at times, but it doesn't feel as much like roommates as it's just kind of like we're two store managers that are switching shifts, where the management is just the household and the kids, and at some point, we have to take time to go to the break room and talk about how annoying the store really can be and what we'd like to do to make it better. So that's but I definitely feel that. And, I realized I jumped the gun, but I was so excited about that date because even though I do have to say this, I thought the tasting menu was great. It was 8 courses, but where I would have changed it was instead of 5 savories and 3 desserts, I would have gone 6 and 2. Yeah. Like, do you need 3 desserts?
That seems a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I think, yeah, no, that's a good
Yeah.
ratio. I think like a 3-to-1 ratio is good, right? I had
Yeah.
a 4-course tasting menu for Mother's Day dinner we went out to. And yeah, it was the right mix.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's too much.
Yeah. Yeah. Anywho.
Anyway.
Yeah. But so yeah, I mean we haven't done finance date night. And I know we we've done we do a lot of finance talking throughout the week, but we do sometimes. My wife's a big s'mores, loves s'mores, anything toasted marshmallow. So a couple years ago for a gift, I got her an electronic. You just plug it in, and it's essentially like an indoor. It's shaped like a fire pit, but it just conduction heat, and sometimes we have our s'more campfire in front of the TV when we remember
Nice.
and we get stuff done. We like to you know jazz up our normal TV or movie time on the couch sometimes by making popcorn and pretending it's a real
Yeah.
date. There's only so much you can do when you can't leave the house, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And you have to get creative, right? Like my wife and I have done a couple of things. One thing that I think more, because the finance date night, you're right. Like not everybody's going to do that. Like I recommend it as a habit, but that doesn't mean that everybody's going to do that. But my wife and I both like to cook. And so one thing we do sometimes, and it's not often, but especially on the weekends, right? Like Fridays and Saturdays are the best time for this because the kids are going to have a consistent bedtime, but we can sleep in a little bit. I've mentioned how on Saturday mornings, my daughter has now trained herself to wake up, close our door, and then go start cartoons for her and her brother and let us sleep in. Right. And we've set some ground rules, like they each get to pick one episode and then it's done. And usually we're awake by then anyway, because we're getting old and our bodies just don't let us sleep in that late, no matter when we went to bed. But when we do have that opportunity to stay up, we'll often do something like watching a movie or playing a board game. But one thing is, if we're just not feeling cooking for the kids, or we're not feeling like having that battle over what they want to eat, we might give them the opportunity to scrounge or just like have chicken nuggets or have something that they want to have and not feed ourselves, and then make dinner together starting at like 8:15, right? And so it's a little bit later of a dinner for us, but gives us the opportunity to cook and connect and talk, and just sort of that can be fun. And I think having that meal together, it gives us, when we do that, the opportunity to sit and have a meal and talk, which we feel we get robbed of pretty much every time we're eating with the kids, right? Even if they're eating what they were supposed to, even if they're eating, they're not complaining. It's mom, watch this, dad, watch this. Oh, this, cutting you off, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
So that's definitely an area that I like. By the way, I was going to say that book thing, that is super thoughtful. Like I didn't say it earlier, but that book thing, man, that is like next level thoughtful of like, I'm going to listen to the books and then I'm going to sprinkle them into the conversation. I think that sort of gets into, some of the ways that, you can improve it, because we've given a lot of anecdotal evidence, but on the more like big stuff, it's just leading with small acts of connection like that, I think are huge, where, sending, even if it's like sending a thoughtful text, or just showing little bits of physical affection that don't have to lead to sex or anything like that. Being appreciative, right? One thing that my wife does that like I really appreciate is she always compliments me on the dinner. You know, if it's good, she's not just throwing out loose compliments, but she just like when I cook a really good dinner, she profusely like thanks me for it. And just to remind people, like she's not thanking me because I did it that one time and she's not having to do it. I cook most of our dinners. So it's just she's complimenting me on a job well done of the thing that I always do. But I think whether it's those small acts of kindness or planning intentional times, like those can be helpful. And then just trying to I think one of the biggest, and I don't know if you have this, but I think sometimes one of the biggest blocks of like, let's say we get to a Friday night, or whether it's happy hour or we're cooking dinner, staying in after the kids have gone to bed, coming up with things to say sometimes when you have just been inundated with meetings and work and kids and your brain has just been on and you're like, the last thing I want to do is try to like be creative here. The last thing I want to do is like turn my brain on yet again, but also at the same time going, man, I feel really bad that I don't have anything to say. You ever go through that?
Yeah, a little bit, but I've kind of resigned myself to the fact that, you know, what are we doing all day? We're working. Then we come home and we are occupied, but whatever's going on with the kids. Then, you know, we have to figure out what the next day is going to look like. Maybe there was something in the news. Spoiler, probably not good. So it's really hard to actually come up with something that is just entirely unrelated to everything that we were doing. And, you know, on it, and sometimes it's fine to, at least for us, it's fine to just say, you know, I really don't care about that, or don't really want to talk about it unless you really need to. You know, like today, my wife, a lot of times there's, you know, my wife's a tour guide, and of her 5 tours, she usually gives a day. And usually one of them is a little interesting. So she'll usually tell me about the most interesting tour of the day. But sometimes, you know, and I don't use this often, but I will sometimes say, honestly, like, I don't really care. Because ultimately, you know, the 0 to 50 people that involved, you will never see again in your life. So we could just move right on, you know? And but the truth is, you know, it's a lot of pressure to put on yourself or your partner to come up with an entertaining anecdote or new topic of conversation when really, just as the way our lives work, we are just preoccupied with our routine and our obligations, and it's not easy to just say something random or creative, you know?
Yeah, and I think it's one of those where I feel like our conversations so often, and this is where I start to feel guilty, our conversations so often are about like the kids or about work. And I'm just like, there's the part of me that recognizes that she's bringing these topics up too, and she's engaging with these topics, and also going, the part of me that says, we need to find something else. Like, we can't just be this. We can't just be our job title and our parental title, right? We, you know, because we have other interests, we have other things. And it's not always the same things, right? Like my wife has no interest in golf, and that's okay, but both my kids do. And so sometimes I want to talk about golf as it relates to the kids, but you know,
you're still talking about the kids.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And we did have one where my wife, for Mother's Day, we basically got her a shopping spree at Ulta, the beauty supply store, and she got a bunch of different makeups. And she was telling me very excitedly. She was like, "You want to hear about all the things I got, like my new optimized skincare routine?" And I'm like, "Sure, tell me all about it." I can't tell you anything about it.
Sure.
I remember hyperfixating on her saying the word serum wrong, or oddly, she says serum. And I was
Yeah,
like,
that's
"That's
incorrect.
what? That's not how you say it." She goes, "You
Yeah.
say it either way." And I'm like, "I've literally never heard anybody else say it that way." And
Don't
then I
think, don't
kind of
think
like
that's true.
blacked out to the content of what she was saying. But
Sure.
there are a lot of serums. I know that.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
but
Cool.
yeah, a lot of SPF in there, good sun protection.
Sure. Of
But
course.
I did feel slightly shorted because one thing I had done that same weekend on Saturday is I had gone and I got fitted for new golf clubs. That is pretty exciting. Like I've had the same golf clubs for about 13 years. Finally decided to bite the bullet and get some new ones. Now that the kids are getting into it, wanted something that was tailored to my swing. Had a great time doing it. Got some new clubs, and I was like, "Yeah, you can tell me all about your beauty routine if I can tell you about your new clubs." And guess what? We didn't talk about. Didn't talk about my golf clubs.
So
And
sorry.
I'm not holding a grudge, but I don't forget.
Sure, of course. Of course. Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean it's my wife doesn't care about golf either.
Yeah.
And so it would honestly, like, if I'm not very good at golf. So usually if I have something to tell her about a round of golf I play, it's about my one good shot. So she will be all in to hear the 30 seconds I have to say about the one shot out of the 18 holes that was good that day. And she will feign enough excitement to make me feel like it's worth it. But, if although I feel like my wife would enjoy hearing about a golf club fitting, because that's not so much about the golf as it is just about kind of like
The process, sort of the
or
science
it's no, it's more just like getting a makeover, like a glow
Yeah.
up. You're
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
pitch it that way. So yeah, no,
Yeah.
it's I would say my most successful thing, and I'm glad you found it. I'm glad you like it. Is the books, and a lot of what brings my wife joy sometimes is her showing me a TikTok. And when I say a TikTok, I mean a lot of TikToks about something that's currently of interest to her. Has your wife stumbled upon the national parks TikTok lately?
No, my wife doesn't do TikTok. If they're on Instagram,
No.
she'll see it, but she's an
Got it.
Instagram girly.
Gotcha. My
She's,
wife's
for
big
some
into
reason, sort of
TikTok.
off TikTok. That's what it is.
I don't have it because I am quite addictive. I have a very addictive personality, so I've refused to download it for this very reason. But
Sure.
my wife could tell me, my wife could spend like an hour telling me about the less than an hour of TikTok she may have watched, but she's got an hour's worth of stuff to say about it. So, I feel like just listening to that gets me some points sometimes in this game.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, and I would say, like one of the biggest things that I've had to work on just personally in my own mental state regarding this, and I think this is applicable to everybody, is it's really easy if you feel like you're in a bit of a rut, roommate stage, whatever, and you're trying to reconnect, that it's very easy to try and keep a scorecard, right? Like I did this nice thing that's maybe not being reciprocated how I wanted. Or,
Sure.
I have checked these boxes. Why aren't you checking the boxes for me? And I think that some goes back to communication, but I think that also is about like changing expectations of the relationship. Not that they're never going to check that box, but try to remember the times they do. But most importantly, like the scorecard's not going to help anybody, because if you're feeling underlying tension, even if it's just like quiet, like going about, just two people on a parallel path, keeping score is just going to build more resentment that other person doesn't even know. And so like addressing the problem both in your actions that you're taking to try and sort of reignite the flame, all that, and in not adding anything to the problem by keeping that scorecard, I think is super important, because really, I think it's about reestablishing yourself as a team, not as just like a parenting team, but as a couple that like any expert worth their salt will tell you this. You don't just like fall in love one time and then it's all happily ever after like that without any work, right?
Nope.
You do have to work on it. You are a different person than when you married your wife. She's a different person than when she married you. And so it's like constantly trying to get to know that person that they are today and falling back in love with that person again.
So I'm gonna get really deep for a second, and this is kind of my life philosophy. We put too much emphasis on love as an emotion. Love is an emotion. It is a feeling. It is something that happens. In fact, it is very similar to the feeling of hate, just the negative and positive. Like the physical reaction one gets is actually very similar. Now, falling in love, very important. Finding someone you love, very important. But if you think about every relationship you've ever had, and it doesn't have to be romantic, you don't just like stop loving somebody. The hard part is staying in like, because liking somebody is the work. Because when you fall in love with somebody, it's usually, I will go off, you don't go to the library to with your eyes closed to figure out who you're going to ask out on a date. You're going to go someone, you're going to see what they look like, you're going to talk to them, and then you're going to see if you kind of like them. So for me, like, it's all about making sure that you continuously like somebody, because as you get older, the emotion and passion is going to fade because we just get tired. The physical aspect is going to fade because we get tired. What you're going to be left with is somebody for the rest of your life that you're just going to talk to about stuff. So if you don't like talking to that person and you don't like them as a person, that's where your relationship, whether it is romantic, friendly, familial, is going to fade. So for me, I think, yes, the quest for love is not an easy one. Finding someone to fall in love with, that is hard. Finding your person is hard. Staying in love is very easy, I think. It's the staying in like that makes it, that is really the challenge in going through life. And when you find yourself in the roommate phase, or you find yourself, how I said, kind of just like two store managers switching shifts, you really got to get back to the in like stage, because, let's be honest.
Yeah.
I love my grandma, but when I visit her and she says, "Would you like to sleep on this my pillow?" I don't really like her, but I still love her. She's my grandma. I'm not really in like with her anymore, if you know what I mean. So, yeah,
I get that.
Yeah.
Speaking of things fading over time, should we work on the? I like that. Let me back up before I do that smooth as heck transition.
Yeah, no, that was great.
I like that. I agree that staying in like, making sure you're liking the person you're with is important, because one day the kids will be gone. They'll be out of the house. You won't have that common thread, of like getting them from point A to point B. They'll be off to the workforce. They'll be off to college. They'll be off to wherever. And you'll be left with each other, right? And the kids will come back from time to time, but you'll go to a different life stage. And if you've spent the last 20 years co-managing with this person and not keeping that relationship at least somewhat steady state on the like portion, you're kind of being for a rude awakening of like, okay, what are we doing here? Like,
yeah.
But yeah. But speaking of things that fade, should we work on the dad bod?
We should. So keep in mind, as Alex mentioned, we're recording early. It is Wednesday night. My weigh-ins are normally Thursday to Thursday. So I'm going to couch that I've only had 6 days since my last weigh-in. Having said all of that prep, don't really matter. So last week, when I weighed in for our episode, I was 187.6. 6 days later, today, I am 186.6. So I have lost another pound, which means I am 16.6 pounds away from my goal weight. Now, as we talked about on Saturday night, I had an 8-course tasting menu, and then on Sunday it was Mother's Day, so we actually went to a bottomless brunch that we tried when my wife was pregnant with our first daughter.
Hell yeah.
So it was not as good as it was 6 years ago. So that was a downer, but I still ate what I paid for, which is always my problem. So I'm gonna call my Sunday eating. That was the real cheat day. I did in anticipation of the 8-course tasting menu. I did a my 5K plus jog around my neighborhood on Saturday. So, I threw in the extra workout. I mentioned how I've upped my last week I talked about upping my cardio from 10 to 20 minutes. I've actually upped it from 20 to 30 minutes most days. So I've just been adding extra cardio to make up for the fact that I have been eating a little more with regard to dinners, because I've been hungrier. So to combat that, I'm probably hungrier because I am working out more. So
Yeah.
it's kind of a
Double-edged sword.
like a chicken and egg thing there. But I am steadily losing weight still. I am still very consistent throughout the day. Yesterday, I worked from home around a doctor's appointment. So instead of having just my protein powder for breakfast, what I did was I took my banana that I normally have at lunch, the protein powder, a spoonful of peanut butter, and a little bit of milk. And I actually made a banana peanut butter chocolate protein shake. And then didn't really have my full lunch. So I changed it up slightly just because I was home and I could. But I have been very cognizant to just try to stay as consistent as I can for breakfast and lunch those 5 days a week. Then I'm also exercising, and things are going well. I have not missed a workout since March 13th of my 5 days a week in the office. So feeling
Very nice.
or 5-day work/workout week. So things are going well. So like I said, we started season 1, or we started season 3, and that's when I was 200 and 200.2 pounds, and today I'm 186.6. So it's the right direction, and just gotta keep it up.
Keep it on. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's definitely the thing. I think as you keep losing weight, right? I think a lot of things happen. Your body starts to fight it a little bit once you start losing about as much weight as you've lost, right? Doesn't really matter what your goal is. It just sort of, your body's like, okay, like you have been starving me long enough, and kind of pushing back on that. And then on the flip side, you have to eat fewer calories to stay at the same deficit, right? Or you have to work out more, or usually a combination thereof, right? Because even a great workout can be undone by a cookie.
Sure.
Or two, right? But it does become tougher. And I think that's why a lot of people, you'll always hear anecdotally people like the last 5 pounds, last 10 pounds, like that's always so tough. And I think especially when you are losing a significant amount of weight, like if you're trying to lose 5 or 10 pounds, no. But if you're trying to lose 20, 30, 40 or more, then it does become pretty tough on your body because you are like, you're at a disadvantage. And yeah. Anyway, for me, last week I was 176.2. This week I was 175.8.
Nice.
Don't have a lot of qualms. Don't have a lot of insights. Just kind of keeping steady. You know, it's not quite the rate I wanted, but you know, little fluctuations and all that stuff. I am going out of town this weekend, and I'm meeting up with my dad for a bit of a boys' weekend at the PGA Championship, and I've already sort of scoped out some steakhouses and some breweries and some different things. So, you know, I'm gonna, you know, just be mindful of what I'm eating and try my best on that. And, you know, we'll see where the weekend takes me, but I'm not going to kill myself for any one result. And, you know, if need be, get back after it on Tuesday when I get back. But yeah, pretty excited about the progress. Might keep going for a little while with the cut. I know I've been like waffling on that, but you know, I still haven't gotten to the point where I think you are, where like what I want to do is sort of stop at the first signs of like diet fatigue, of like, I really feel like I'm having to work hard to be in a calorie deficit, where it feels like I'm just constantly hungry and want to eat more stuff. And that doesn't mean I'm going to cut weight forever and ever. But
Sure.
you know, it's like maybe 175, maybe 170, we'll kind of see, as long as I'm taking sort of a slow, steady approach and I'm not just cutting muscle mass to reach number on a scale, then I'm going to feel pretty good. You know, the body fat number is more my concern. And I've mentioned it before. I think at some point, whether that's, you know, probably at the 170 mark, if I got down there, I would love to try and like lean bulk and add more muscle mass. You know, it's not about the 170 mark. It's more about like wanting to not have too much body fat before I got into a caloric surplus. Because even with the best laid caloric surpluses, you're going to gain some body fat. So it's sort of like saying, okay, I want to get as much of it off before I start that journey. Right.
Yeah. Yep. And you know, that's always the dream, where you're like, I need to eat more to bulk up. I'm obviously nowhere near there, but you know, I look forward to getting to the maintenance stage when I get there. But you know, I've alluded to my job lately, and you know, the one thing in my life I can really control right now is my exercise and my physical health. Everything else is kind of not to me, or you know, like I've got a parent, right? I've got to pay bills. The only thing I can really do is work on this right now. So my priority every day is to work on this, and everything else I do around it. So yeah.
Exactly.
Well, everybody, thank you so much for working on the Dad Pod with us this week. Maybe you will get the special surprise of the YouTube video early. Otherwise, you'll be listening to this on podcast form on Friday morning per usual. Alex, I hope you and your dad have a great trip. And everybody else, we will see you next week. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Thanks for working on the Dad Pod with us. Any resources that we mentioned during the show will be in the show notes. If you have questions, thoughts, or just want to talk with us, the best place is in the comments on YouTube. We're on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and Threads at Working on the Dad Pod, and on Twitter at Working on Dad Pod. Following and subscribing is always appreciated. Please rate and review us. That helps get the show to new people. And if you know a dad who would enjoy our show, sharing it with them is a huge help to them and us. Have a great week.